Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time of day it is where you're at. Welcome to Collider Dailies. I'm John Aldritz, and joining me today is Ross. Ross, how are you doing?
Hi, good. Nice to be here. First time, very excited.
You're somebody who has been on the list of people that we should get on the show for a while. So I'm glad that we finally got you on an episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a ton of fun. Today we are talking about Ross's films that he thinks that you absolutely should see, his must-watches, as it were. We're going to be talking about Karate Kid starting production and getting a new fancy logo. But first, let's talk about Dune Messiah, or Dune Part 3, Dune 3, however you want to refer to it. This is something that we've kind of got the feeling that Denis Villeneuve wants to do, but it seems like he is now officially working on developing it. According to a report from Variety, Villeneuve has started working on an adaptation that he is going to hopefully be getting to after his adaptation of the nonfiction book Nuclear War: A Scenario. Ross, how are you feeling about this? Is this something that you're excited about? Do you want to see more Dune from Villeneuve?
Yeah, I think he really finally got into the pattern of what I wanted to see with a Dune movie with the second one. So, and I think the ending really sets it up that he wanted to do a third one very clearly. I think him taking a little bit of time off makes sense since there's a kind of a jump into Dune Messiah. It's like 12 years after the second one, I believe. Yeah, I mean, and also, he's been wanting to really clarify that Paul is the villain. So I think this one will definitely solidify that for people who missed the point of the second one. But yeah, I'm excited to see those characters again. I wasn't a big fan of the first Dune, to be honest. I thought it was a lot of setup to nothing. But then Dune Part 2 kind of got someplace interesting to me, I thought. So yeah, I'm definitely interested to see more. And also they clone Duncan Idaho in the third one. So
how familiar are you with the books? Have you read a bunch of them or any of them?
I read the first book after the first movie came out, and I was like, hey man, it's really picking up in these last 100 pages. And that's when Dune Part 2 pretty much happens. I felt like yeah, I think it's fine. I'm not a big sci-fi guy. I like the Foundation books a little bit more. But I think Denis Villeneuve did a really good job with Dune Part 2, especially. It's bold. It's bigger than the first Dune. I like that it got into the characters more, which I didn't feel like the first one really did either. But yeah, it's an interesting world. I think there's a lot of opportunities there, and especially I think WB and Max are going to try to milk that sucker as much as they can, because we also have Dune Prophecy coming out supposedly at the end of this year. So they're really working hard on making this the next big thing, I think. So
I'm just a little bit curious because Dune Messiah is a much shorter story. It's actually the smallest book in the franchise. So I'm a little bit curious if he might mix in elements of Children of Dune as well. I know that the last time that we had an adaptation of any of the other Dune books outside of just the original Dune, the last one that I remember was the Sci-Fi Channel mini series of Children of Dune, which very much wove in both Messiah and Children of Dune into one adaptation. I'm kind of curious if that might be the direction that Villeneuve goes with this.
Yeah, but either way, yeah, I mean, especially if this is going to be the end for him, as he's kind of said, he's kind of envisioned it as a 3-part story, even though he only had it greenlit for 2. I mean, Hans Zimmer's been working on the score of the third one already, even before they announced this. So I could definitely see him bringing in influences from those other books and tossing them in there, because what other chance does he have if this is the last one?
That being said, so Dune Messiah very much finishes Paul's part of the story. And then obviously Children of Dune, as the title would make you, think, picks up with his children. So it could be possible that he could just put a lot more emphasis on Paul and not feel the need to get into the children stuff. Because once you introduce, Leto II and then you get him turning into a worm, and then you get all the weird stuff from the later books. Very,
yeah. Now we're talking.
bizarre.
Yeah, now we're talking. If we get worm people in this thing, let's go.
If anybody in the audience has not checked out like the later Dune books, it turns into like a fever dream. Like it's just absolutely bizarre. There are some people who think that the original book is weird. Not even remotely close to the way to where that series goes. Yeah. It's bizarre. Mike Joyce says, "Bring on the God Emperor." No, do not bring on the God Emperor.
I mean, yeah, I feel like these first two books are really like Paul's story. So I don't know how much they're going to get into like the kids and stuff. Because yeah, like you said, it kind of seems like it goes off the rails from there.
Yeah.
But I'm all for being super weird. I mean, like Denis Villeneuve had Enemy, and that ends with a giant spider, like out of nowhere. So why not worm people?
I think I'd be down for Villeneuve, like unleashing a little bit of the strange, a little bit. But you know,
he's been too normal for too long lately, and I'm sick of it, quite frankly. Bring on worms.
I mean, all right, yeah. But yes, so that's all that we really have to say about that. No real news beyond that. We don't know anything about when we might be getting a release down the line. We don't know if there's going to be a crossover with Tremors, as Maggie is pointing out in chat. I would actually love that, unironically. We don't know anything else about like when to expect it. Just know that it is in the works. It is something that is going to be coming at some point down the line, which again, we kind of knew this was coming already, as you said, based off the ending. It very much felt like they wanted to keep going there. Villeneuve has actually said before that he wanted to do this. And, you know, with how much money that second one just keeps making, there's no way that they weren't going to do this.
Warner Brothers is in the Chalamet business until the end of time at this point. So
yeah, they very much are. Which honestly, with his performances in the last two Dune movies, and Wonka to an extent, I'm honestly like I'm not bothered. Like they can keep putting him in things.
Yeah, bring Wonka into Dune too. Let's go nuts. Let's go crazy.
That's the crossover that we actually want, Maggie. We don't need Dune and Tremors. We want Dune and Wonka.
That's
all for that. Moving on to our next topic for the day is the Karate Kid movie, the next one, has officially started production as per a social media post from Sony Pictures themselves, which is also where we got our first look at the new logo for the film, which is looking vaguely Cobra Kai-ish, but not quite enough for us to get the crossover that we so very much want, because this film is going to be largely standalone. It is starring Ralph Macchio. Jackie Chan is coming in from that Karate Kid film, and Ming-Na Wen is joining the cast. Is this something that you're excited about? Is this something that you're looking forward to? I don't know where your proclivities towards the Karate Kid series lies.
I like the original, the 84 one. I thought the 2010 one was fine. I watched the first season of Cobra Kai. I thought that was good. I think it's so weird that you're going to have Ralph Macchio in this film, but it's not tied to Cobra Kai. But it's so dumb. Like, I mean, not dumb, but it's like, it's confusing that you're having like a split in the timeline of the Karate Kid universe. Like, it just seems a strange thing to do.
I'm almost curious because like I know that they confirmed that it's not going to be connected, but I'm holding out hope that what they're actually going to do is just say like narratively this isn't connected, but it's still in the same universe. Like that stuff happened, but it's just not going to factor into this at all.
Yeah.
It seems weird to do that, but especially with how popular Cobra Kai is.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand it. I don't know. But honestly, I'm not going to say no to a Jackie Chan movie pretty much ever. So the opportunity to see him there, and also just the opportunity to see more Ralph Macchio.
Yeah.
I'm not going to complain about.
And you know, even if you don't like the 2010 one, you know, Jackie Chan's pretty solid in it. Like, he was fun. And if you can't have Pat Morita, Jackie Chan's not a bad alternate. for that, I
Yeah.
guess.
I am definitely curious, and I think that it's the part of this project that I feel like we kind of need to know is how these two characters are going to meet up at all. Because assuming that this film at the very least follows the continuity of the original Karate Kid films and that 2010 Karate Kid, he was in China, and like I can't understand a reason for him to suddenly wind up hanging out. Like it just doesn't.
I,
I don't see how that happened. Like, do they run into each other at the airport?
I,
But even
I
then, how do they know how do they know who each other is?
I think you've given this more thought than they have. It seems like, I mean, I don't know the story
I
of the new
hope that's not the case.
It's just, it seems so strange. Like, yeah, because this isn't technically like this, like it's not the same Mr. Han. It's a different Mr. Han, technically, right? I don't know. It's uh
Are we getting a Karate Kid multiverse? And then
what
are we
we
going to get like a big team up at the end where all the multiverses cross over? Are we going to get Karate Kid Secret Wars?
we need the Fast Five of the Karate Kid universe, where it's like they just pick and choose the best of all these movies and TV shows. Throw in Hilary Swank, throw in everyone from Cobra Kai, just like make it a whole crazy thing. Like you're taking it, I feel like they're taking it too seriously, and just the fact that they're not tying it in to Cobra Kai, I think, is just a wild like split in the multiverse. It seems like.
Yeah, as Sam Red says in chat, Cobra Kai is the sole reason for the resurgence in interest. It seems ridiculous not to have any of the creators involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Karate Kid is a beloved franchise, and we're still kind of in the era of like legacy sequels to 80s and 90s film properties, and so this is pretty on track. But even
Yeah.
then, Cobra Kai is what definitely brought it back into the cultural zeitgeist, so not having it connected
Yeah.
just
And with
seems
this,
bizarre.
and this new season is going to be the last season, so I imagine this is a way for them to try to continue Ralph Macchio into this universe without having the show, I'm assuming. um I mean, I'll see it.
Yeah, I
Joshua
mean, I'm gonna
Jackson,
watch it, but
yeah, I'm always happy to see Joshua Jackson in a movie, especially
yeah.
one playing off my nostalgia for Joshua Jackson. So bring him back for the Mighty Ducks 4, like bring him back for anything.
I just think that yeah, I don't know. I am excited. I am tentatively interested in this. We're just gonna have to see how things go.
Mhm.
Uh yeah, it's gonna be a little while before we see this. It is currently slated, I believe, for it says later on this year, but if they're starting production now, I'm not entirely sure how much I believe that.
Yeah, I think
Uh
they pushed it. I think it was supposed to be originally this summer, and then they pushed it to the holiday season.
yeah, it is currently listed as December 13th of this year,
We'll see.
which that's a pretty quick turnaround, but I mean, not the craziest turnaround.
Yeah.
Uh, Arrow's asking, is it true that Ming-Na Wen it will be in this movie? Yes, she is. She is. I believe it was just officially confirmed. I want to say yesterday or the day before,
Mhm.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is. She is in it, which I'm excited about. I will never complain about seeing more Ming-Na Wen.
Yeah.
She's just one of those actresses that I always have fun whenever she shows up, no matter what it is that she's doing.
Yeah.
Easily the highlight of Agents of Shield, which I didn't like that show, but I liked seeing her.
I bailed
Uh,
on one. Sorry.
and moving on to our final bit of discussion for this day, because this is Ross's first episode of Collider Dailies, I figured it'd be good for everybody to get to know, what kind of movies and stuff that he appreciates and kind of get a feel for his particular taste in things. So what we're going to do is these are Ross's films that he feels like every film fan should see at least once. Ross, hit me with your first one.
All right. So we were talking about how before this that like, I didn't want to do like Citizen Kane or Godfather or Casablanca, like the ones that everyone knows these films. My first one is kind of in that uh, lineup of films, I would say at this point. It's getting there, but the first one I would say is City Lights. It's Chaplin's 1931 film. I feel like a lot of people really struggle with black and white films and silent films, and I feel like Chaplin's a really good way to get into these older films. It's fun. It's a very like sweet, very sad movie. It has one of the best last scenes I've ever seen in a movie that makes me cry every single time because it's either very happy if you're an optimist or it's the saddest thing you've ever seen in your life if you're not. He was a master. I think he did some incredible things with film that we still see happening today. The way he mixed like romance and comedy and drama, and his films are very like just very impressive. And City Lights I think is still his best. But I mean, you have, you could watch The Circus. The Great Dictator is also like, an absurdly great film. Even some of his talking films, I think, like when I was getting into watching older films, for me Chaplin was like the gateway in. And I think for a lot of people, that's a good way to get in, especially like people who don't like black and white and silent films. I think it's kind of
for me when it comes to getting people to watch that era of films, like Chaplin is always just like a really easy like go-to to get people to go in, because he is such a recognizable name even still today that it's like really easy to be like, hey, let's watch a Charlie Chaplin movie. Another good example would be Buster Keaton. Like a lot of Buster Keaton stuff is still very approachable even today. And also like another one, like I'll just tell people to watch Nosferatu. Like that's the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Those are two films that don't rely on the comedy to kind of hook you, but still work today. But Chaplin, I think, is solid way to go for sure.
Like early horror black and white stuff is also just like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, especially with the new Nosferatu coming out. Like people are gonna be checking that one out. But and a lot of these are classics for like Citizen Kane and Godfather. Those are classics for a reason. Like everyone should check them out. Like they're not as crazy, like stuffy and difficult to get into as I think a lot of people would say.
But silent films are definitely something that like even hardcore cinephiles struggle with getting into silent films, because it is just like missing that element of sound is sometimes like a really difficult hurdle to get over. So yeah, Chaplin is a fantastic way to go with that. What is your second film? What do you got?
I struggle with this one. I said High and Low. It's a Kurosawa film. I think also people like struggle with international films a lot of times. I know Bong Joon-ho said like, you just gotta get past that subtitle, and there's a lot of great films there. High and Low, I think, is kind of one of the more underrated Kurosawa films. It's still pretty beloved, but it's a very, very tense film. Spike Lee's remaking it with Denzel Washington and Jeffrey Wright. And I think it's going to be a really interesting adaptation of that. But it's just a very slow, like simmering, tense film about a father who his son gets kidnapped. And so he has to pay the person who has kidnapped his son. And then he finds out that the kid isn't his son that was kidnapped and his like helper. And so he has to decide whether or not he wants to pay the ransom for this other child that's not his own. And it becomes like a mystery near the like second half. And it's just wild. And this was also like looking when I was starting to get into like international films. Kurosawa was, of course, a big one for me. But High and Low was one where I was like, holy crap, this is just an absurdly great film. And I think it deserves to be up there with like Seven Samurai and Rashomon and Ikiru and all those other really great Kurosawa films.
So I will admit, this is one where I've watched quite a few films of Kurosawa's, but that is one that I actually have not seen. I just haven't ever gotten around to it. So I'm definitely going to be checking that out. He as a director, he's just so influential and someone that honestly, it doesn't matter which of his works you watch. You should watch some Kurosawa. If you watch his stuff, you're going to notice a lot of stuff that he does. You still see in like Western cinema today.
Oh yeah, like I mean, the Hidden Fortress. Like George Lucas just stole the Hidden Fortress in Star Wars.
Star Wars is just Hidden Fortress.
Yojimbo and Sanjuro are like For a Few Dollars More, and a bunch of other Eastwood things, and it's just his impact is still everywhere in film. And I'm very excited about High and Low, the remake High and Low coming out, because I think Spike Lee is going to do a great job, and with Denzel, like it's just an embarrassment of riches with a great story. And yeah, and there's a lot of like I just want to use this as like also saying like international films, like people need to check out more international films. I mean, like I almost put Dogtooth on here, which is Yorgos Lanthimos's I believe his first film, or not his first film, but one of his first films. Um, just a wild film unlike anything I've ever seen. And I think, you see that a lot with international films where it's something completely different than what you'd expect from American cinema. And I think, Kurosawa did that better than almost anyone, in my opinion.
Solid reasoning. Yeah, international film is one of those things that it can be a little bit difficult. What was the phrase that was used when talking about subtitles? I believe that it was it's like a 1-foot fence or something like that, where it's like it's not a hard thing to get over, but you have to get over it.
Yeah, and I think American audiences I think are getting more inclined to checking out international films because they Parasite did a huge service to American audiences, and like you see Anatomy of a Fall doing really well, Zone of Interest, like it really opened the doors I think for a lot of people to check out international films in a way that they hadn't before and be like, oh, there's something that's not American that's great. Like I think we kind of focus on American film maybe too much. So, yeah.
Well, and I think that it's something that we might not think about too much, but I'm curious how much the popularity of anime has helped people get over like the subtitle thing or get over the cultural things, get over this idea of like, this is weird and this is not American, so I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that probably has to play into it at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Arrow saying, if you ever have the chance, Kalishnikov is a great Russian film about the man who created the AK-47. Really fantastic film in my eyes, released in 2020. I have seen clips of that movie, but I've not seen the full thing.
Yeah, I've not seen it either.
It definitely is kind of right up my alley because I love historical like biography pieces, and so that would be a fun one to check out.
Yeah.
What is your next film? What else you got for us?
All right, this is a bit of a curveball. I think everyone needs to see The Room.
I'll be honest, I was expecting a lot of stuff from you. I was not expecting Tommy Wiseau.
It is The Room broke my brain in a way that made me see film differently than what I expect. Like, because for me, The Room is a film that it works. Like it works for me. Everything about that movie is wrong, but it's still effective in a way that he never like Tommy Wiseau never expected it to be taken in this specific way. And I think it's a good example of how films evolve over time. I think, when it came out, nobody saw it. Like 3 or 4 people became huge fans of it, took it to the internet, and it just blew up into this thing that like you can still go see it every month in theaters like 20 years later. And I think it kind of speaks to like, yeah, like you have directorial intent. Director's gonna like he thought he was making like a Streetcar Named Desire for a new generation, and that's not what this is. That's not what it became. It became one of the best like comedies ever. And I think that there's something interesting. The Disaster Artist got into that about how like it's not what he expected it to be, but it became something equally great, I think, because it brought so many people joy. It brought it's such a wild thing. And I think every film you kind of learn something from, like even the bad films. And especially when you watch The Room, you kind of see it's really easy to make a really bad film. Like you can put everything you want into it. And there's just like it's so hard to make a film watchable. But and it's a bad film, but it's not a boring film by any stretch of the imagination. So
for me, it is the perfect encapsulation of so bad it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's like it was a film that was made genuinely, like they were actually trying to do something well, and it just didn't work. And so it's like you can see the effort and you can see the passion there.
Mm-hmm.
and you can also see the lack of technical knowledge and the lack of any sort of direction or plan or knowledge of what you're doing or talent.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it great, is you can very much feel that passion there. And that's why like movies like, I don't know, like Samurai Cop 2 and like stuff like this, where it's like it is purposefully made bad,
Yeah. Doesn't
doesn't work for me.
no. Yeah, like I watched everyone watched the Sharknado films, and they were trying so hard. Like Birdemic, I think, kind of tries a little hard to be something along those lines. But if you're trying, it doesn't, like, you can tell there is heart in this. Like this, to him, this was his story. Like this is something that he felt he needed to say, and it didn't come out like the way that he expected it to. And I think, I don't know, I always find it really weirdly moving the room, because I'm like, this guy like just gave everything and literally millions of dollars to make the room, and it's not what he wanted, but it's still like a huge success. And like, we don't know, like, I think with any artistic endeavor, you don't know how it's going to be perceived, or what its life is going to be. And I
Yeah.
think there's movies that we thought were great 50 years ago that nobody thinks about anymore, but there's movies like The Room that failed miserably out the gate, and then 20 years later, like, has a huge cultural impact in very weird ways. And I think that's kind of impressive.
Yeah.
Good for you,
I mean,
Tommy.
because of that movie, every single time I see a dog out in the wild, I go, "Oh, hi, doggy." And
It's a perfect film. It's a perfect film to me. And if you've
there's
never been to a live performance, it is one of the greatest things you will ever.
I've never been to a live performance of The Room. Obviously I've been to like Rocky Horror Picture Show and stuff
Mhm.
like that, but I've never been to The Room. Probably because like where I live, people like it isn't done out here.
Yeah.
I think I'd have to drive into Seattle to
Mhm.
catch that kind of thing, which I'm pretty sure that they do it in Seattle. So maybe I might have to at some point.
Yeah, I've been a few times, and I went once with Tommy Wiseau and Greg Sestero there, and Tommy Wiseau is exactly what you want him to be. Whatever that is, it's exactly what he is.
And I will say, like, the film, the film, The Disaster Artist, I wasn't like, I enjoyed it, but I didn't like it
Mhm.
as much.
Yeah,
The book, though, is
very
fantastic and
good.
gives you like a really great look into what it was like actually
Yeah.
making The Room, and how just insane and very eccentric Wiseau is, and how
God.
like very protective of his like past and anything about his backstory. Like he just does not want anyone to know anything about him before he
Yeah,
randomly appeared one
he's a
day.
he's a wild character. He's always wearing, like, 3 belts for no reason.
He's just
Like,
such an
I love
enigma.
him. Yeah. He's got a new movie, I think, that just premiered last year called Big Shark. Uh,
Yeah.
so I'm very excited to see what that's gonna be, but, uh, just what a man. What a weird, weird man.
I mean, he's so weird and so bizarre, but so lovely.
Yeah.
Uh, and with that, that is where we are going to end today's show. Uh, Ross, do you have any like projects or anything coming down the pipeline that you want to talk about? Any articles or anything that you're working on?
Well, last month I did do a ranking of all the Best Picture winners. That's
Awesome.
probably the biggest thing I've ever done. It's like a huge piece, 96 films. We threw Oppenheimer in there. It was a lot of fun to do. It was exhausting, but people want to read that. It's on Collider.com.
And actually, I believe that article, if I'm not mistaken, I did a video for that article.
Yeah, you
Uh,
did. Yeah.
so you can go there, you can read the article, you can check out the video that goes with it,
Mhm.
and you can have a great time with that. Or just go over to collider.com and check out any of the many, many articles that we release out there. We have such a talented team of writers who put in so much work to put out just some fantastic stuff day in and day out. So get over there, get yourself learned up, stay aware of what is going on in the entertainment sphere, and click on some ads. I don't know. But anyways, with that, that is where we are going to end today's show. Ross, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
It was so much fun to have you around. For the rest of you guys, we will be back on Monday talking about all the movie news and all that fantastic stuff. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Make good choices. Have a great time. Relax. Spend some time with some loved ones or do something fun like that. And we'll see you next time.